Walking out of the 5th episode of Demon King Academy, or the first episode of the 2nd arc, all I can say is that this series sets an example for more light novel, Magic Academy, Magic series, high school hijinks nonsense in the future. Because this show is remarkable, and I honestly walked in expecting that this episode wouldn't be nearly as good as the first arc. I know I was actually pretty excited after last review, but the more I thought about it, the more days that passed, I thought there's no way that this show, that honestly, if you look at this series at surface level and you read it out loud off of a piece of paper, it's very generic in terms of its premise and what it's doing. Yet the execution of that generic premise every single time is engaging and it feels different. And I keep asking myself, what are they really doing that makes it stand out? Yes, there's a comedy side to the show, but that comedy side isn't what makes it so unique. And honestly, after this week's episode, I think it's because it doesn't waste your time, and rather than just showing what's already been seen before, that's there for like 2 minutes, and then the entire rest of the episode is territory that you generally don't get to see because most light novel authors, most anime studios, they waste your time just rehashing what came before rather than trying something new and different. And that's something you have to give a lot of praise to, and I have to compliment this author, and of course the studio, for going above and beyond creating a production that is honestly one of my favorite shows of this anime season. And I know that's a bold claim with how many great sequels and stuff are out, but honestly, this show, it just entertains me, and I never get mad at it. I literally enjoy every aspect about this show, and have zero complaints after 5 weeks of a show that screams generic on paper, but is flawless in terms of its execution. It knows what it wants to be, and it doesn't play around with any viewer. Like, I love that, because most of the time, when you have something like, oh, they captured this staff, and that's gonna get them 100% on their test, that would usually be 2 to 3 episodes worth of content, because, oh, someone stole it. Would it be the teacher? Because the teacher clearly doesn't like our main man. Obviously, there'd probably be a student behind that, and then you'd question, oh, the person who's being a smartass probably did it, but we don't have proof. That would be 3 episodes worth of content. Maybe it's only a chapter in the source material, but still, you know the formula. But because this is Demon King Academy, our man will just come up, rip the thing right from his chest, give it to the teacher and say, hey, if you're gonna be a dumbass, be a little more intelligent next time, because that shit ain't gonna fly. So instead of wasting a 1/4 of your anime season, you just get that out of the way to progress to something new and interesting. Why can't more do that? And I think it's simply because they're afraid to take risks. I don't think it's because anime studios or authors in general are incompetent to the point that they can't write things like this. It's that they're afraid to take risks. Because if you look at what's popular, okay, what's the biggest manga and light novels and things like that, if you're gonna make a series like this, what are the ones you look to? And you say, okay, this is how they structure it, so we're gonna have, oh, they have these 2 females, I'm gonna make these 2 females, they're gonna be very similar. And maybe eventually down the line, halfway through, they say, okay, I'm confident, I have my own fan base, I can try my own thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Where it feels like this author, just from the get-go, is like, I'm just gonna do what I want. And hopefully people are intelligent and will be able to stick with this, rather than just saying, oh, because I'm not fighting over who's best girl, I'm losing interest. This is remarkable, and I can't wait to see where they're gonna take it. This episode kicks it off with a flashback back in the day when he was still Demon King, and we're seeing one of his loyal minions basically just one-shotting shit left and right, beautiful magic left and right, and we see our hero. We get a little more information in terms of this. Apparently, this hero just keeps dying and coming back time and time again, and as we learn later in the episode, his sword is the only one he can never draw, which is probably going to be pretty important down the line. But I thought it was quite interesting having someone who is very loyal say, hey, I want to be reincarnated someday in the future, and then as the episode gets going, we get introduced to a character named Ray. I actually looked it up. Apparently in like the source material, he's Lay, L-A-Y, but maybe because, you know, L's are pronounced like R's in Japan, something like that, maybe that's why the subtitles say Ray. Definitely going to use Ray for sure though, because it's much more natural for me. But it's interesting how they kick it off with saying, hey, this is going to be important. We know this show doesn't waste our time, so we already know what to expect while already getting some great information beforehand. And I really like that because this show, it does have its funny moments. I mean, how do you introduce a character who's like, hey, I'm super overpowered, everyone knows I'm overpowered, I'm gonna join the main character's team. Generally, it's like, yeah, of course, join the main character's team. And our man's like, nah, if you want to do it, you gotta prove it. That usually doesn't happen, and I love that. And because you have that, you get a great battle that feels something like an end of a season battle once again, as you get this bonding moment as they both are like, it feels like I fought you before. He's like, what if I told you that we did 2,000 years ago? He's like, well, you know, that may be crazy, but you probably got a point here. It's nice how nonchalantly everything in this show happens, because it understands if we're tossing fireballs and water dragons and spirits and giant movable towers, it's okay for characters to just kind of agree, though. It's not insane to think that, and I like how, because they're that confident, they can have very natural dialogue that feels funny on paper, but honestly comes out very natural because there's just so much absurdity on screen anyway, that it really sucks you in with its writing. I actually really liked how they had this like little test where it's like this sword maneuver where everyone's trying to pull out a sword, and if they can fight one of the teachers. I actually was thinking it was going to go the route of like, okay, clearly our main man, he would pull out a sword, and probably the transfer student would as well, but I thought they were going to go a little more hostile, because that's usually what you expect with a show like this, where if there's someone who they knew each other from the past, it'd be this rivalry and things like that, but it was just comfy, fun friends bickering and just like challenging one another, because they are so ridiculously powerful that they haven't had a real challenge, and someone who actually can give them a challenge, even though, of course, Anos wouldn't be able to lose in this situation, he can fight with a tree branch and actually test this guy's merit along the way, and that's what you want to see with a show like this. And I actually really appreciate what they're doing with this arc, because I honestly expected that they would focus primarily on the sisters again for at least the next arc, because that's usually how it goes. If you have a confident first arc, you're like, okay, the fan base, the readers, things like that, they like these characters, let's keep that going. But honestly, they didn't have too much relevance in this episode, and that's not a bad thing. They had a great arc, and it concluded amazingly, and they did have a couple of great moments in this episode. Like, I love the fact that they actually fought alongside each other on the battlefield, and it's like, I never thought this would happen. It actually goes to show that the previous events actually have lasting impact going forward, but instead of just rehashing more sister formula, clearly their relationship is growing and evolving, and that's going to be really great for a man. But of course, they went with something new and interesting, with the whole transfer student being someone that he knew from his past and also is reincarnated. And I love that. It's taking it in new territory, and I can safely say that I believe every single episode of this anime is going to be great. At the very worst, it's going to be great, if not amazing, because the fact that they didn't slip up with this arc, it shows me that the start of this is just setting an example that everything that we're going to see next is going to be entertaining and is going to progress in new territory rather than wasting our time like we're typically used to. I already love the personality of our new character, and I think it's going to be really fun seeing someone join a team that honestly, it just feels so ridiculously overpowered, and I can't wait to see how much more insane it's going to become. Not to mention, we get to see a fan club for Anos, and I love it. I can't say enough how much I love it. The fact that there's these lines like, are we breathing the same air as him? Is this an indirect kiss? And I'm like, this can't be happening. And I love it. They are setting up the biggest harem you could ever imagine for a show like this. Look at how many females are on screen here, yet I am not worried in the slightest, because he's like, we'll see if you can join. He's just very confident in the fact that people either like him or hate him, and he uses it and manipulates it in a way that will make him in the best situation that he can imagine, and I love that. And it's actually interesting how from where he started out only having one person that everyone ignored on his team, to now by episode 5 basically having a mini army fighting over who can be his right-hand man or right-hand woman, and I love that because there's clearly only a couple of people who could be, but yet you have all these girls fawning over him and it doesn't feel cliche or cringy. It just feels great because this character just has such great and witty dialogue with insane moves and maneuvers that just, it sucks you right in. And something I'm really enjoying about this is how insane the magic visuals are in this anime. I don't know why the studio went as in as they did, maybe because they actually really believed in the source tier, or just they didn't have too much on their plate so they could really give it all the time and attention it deserves. But look at how many different magic attacks are in this episode from the beginning. You have this like water serpent, all the different colorful effects from explosions and summoning magic, the explosions, and just the idea of creating like a castle that's like movable and things like that, this mobile fortress. Every single time something's different on screen in terms of its magic explosion, or just its creativity with how it's summoning things, it feels different. It's not that there's ever really a challenge. Like every episode, it feels like the escalation does increase, as if because he's so powerful, you have to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And usually that could get pretty boring, but because we're on a more comedic side to the story, it doesn't feel jarring or out of place. Rather, it feels like, I mean, since he's basically one-shotting everyone, you have to throw more and more at him. And the fact that the visuals are escalating alongside the writing, and it doesn't feel like, oh, it's like sloppy mess, it doesn't feel like out of place CGI, it actually feels like really well-polished 2D hand-drawn animation with some really cool effects, both 3D and 2D kind of mixed together. And it's honestly amazing to see how The flair of this show is absolutely remarkable. I think a show like this you generally don't get to see in an anime season, and I hope it continues on the track that is going, because it looks great, it sounds great, the story's interesting, and the characters keep sucking me right in. But as always, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below, favorite moment, and where you think it might go next week. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you have been new around here. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.